Before the episode, folks, an important disclaimer. The fund manager, relative, or associate may have financial interest in the subject company. The fund manager, relative, associate, or Alchemy may have an actual or beneficial ownership of 1% or long short positions in the subject securities for himself or for the clients. The fund manager or associate may have received compensation or other benefit in the subject security or securities. The discussion shall not be relied upon as advisory or decisions to buy or sell any securities. So, folks, please keep that disclaimer in mind.
At the beginning of the bull cycle in 2003, and I'll just talk about real estate, it's very instructive about other sectors. The weightage in the top 800 companies was zero in the market cap. Okay. Zero. There was almost
There was
nothing.
nothing. Yeah,
There was nothing.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
By the end of that cycle, 2008 peak of the market, the weight had gone up to 6.9% of the top 800 companies, full market cap. Because of DLF, Unitech, all these, great companies, JP, VP, all of that, right? From a peak of 6.9%, by 2019, the weight went down to 0.6.
So almost 20 years back to what it used to be for something as basic as housing, which
Yes. Okay. Real
wow,
estate.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Or ab 0.6 ka,
Huh.
we were looking at the numbers just as of very recently. We have just gone back to 1.8.
Not
Now
even,
just imagine
yeah,
if
yeah,
India
yeah.
is going to be a 10 trillion economy.
Yeah.
Market cap is going to be 10 trillion. So much wealth has been created. Is cycle mein to it can definitely go above the previous peak of 6.8%.
With newer players also. There are some.
And
that
now
did-
you have
yeah.
RERA ho gaya hai. You have all organized. The industry has consolidated. And you can see it.
And you can choose from whatever you want. You've
Yeah.
got large, mid,
Right
small,
from
everything.
DLF all the way down.
Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and on today's episode, I'm really thrilled to welcome back Hiren Ved, Director and CIO, Alchemy Capital Management, on our show, this time in person. We will be talking about outlook for equities, sectors, themes, bull markets, corrections, and much more. Hiren, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. It is great to have you in the studio after that online recording we did during the second wave. So, welcome and thank you for doing this for our listeners.
Thank you, Anupam, for having me on this show. I enjoyed the first one.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
so looking forward to
Yeah.
interacting with you on the second one.
I'm missing the painting of the bulls because that was from your office. And folks, go back into the archives and just check it out. I think it was somewhere in April 2021. We had done this online recording. Hiren was at his heritage building, beautiful building, and there's a nice painting of the bulls that you can see in that frame. Tell us about that painting. We were just talking about it before the recording.
Yeah, so when the office was being done, right, and so my partner, he loves art. He also understands art. So we were thinking, what should we put there? We should put a nice painting because it is a big wall that we have, right? And then he said, why not put Partho Datta? Because Partho Datta is he does charcoal painting, and his bulls are very famous. And it has a great connotation for in our business, right? Whether you're a bullish, you're a bull on the market. So I have that painting behind me with two roaring bulls
Nice.
behind me, right?
Yeah. And I don't think either of us wants to be a top of the market indicator. Talking about bulls right now, given where we are in the
So
stock
just
market.
because, on an interesting note, so I also have a bear in my office. But उसको एक corner में रख दिया है हमने.
You interchange positions depending on the Nifty. But Hiren, 2.5 years ago, okay, when we had, that was the end of the second wave, a particularly rough period for all of us.
Yes.
In India, in the world. We had done an online recording, and at that time the Nifty was 17,378. It was up 60% then, over the previous year.
Right.
Obviously, because you're coming out of that whole lockdown thing.
Yes.
So I think kuch 12 ka 17,378 hua
Barabar.
tha. And here we are now. It is 10th April 2024 when this recording is happening. I think today itself the Nifty was another all-time high of about 22,700. So from when we recorded 2.5 years ago to now, we are plus 30% for Nifty, plus 45% for small caps and plus 67% for mid caps. अभी ये तो हो गया अभी. Going forward, please. I mean, I don't want to make sense of what has happened. चलो वो तो हो गया.
हाँ.
Anybody who's listening in now wants to know your view as to what lies ahead, whether it's economy, whether it's market, big picture, whatever it is.
So Anupam, I mean, you ask a market guy, what do you think? He's always going to be bullish. But what I want, I know you said कि ये हो गया, this is all done. But I want to set the context, right? Because I think currently there is a overwhelming concern people have that markets are overvalued, especially small and mid caps have run up too much, and everybody is trying to find reasons to be cautious, right? Now, look, in investing, you should always be prudent. You should always have one eye on the risks, but you don't look for trouble, right? I mean, this is what I think is like people looking out for trouble. To put it in one line, I am extremely bullish on the economy and the markets. Does that mean things can't go wrong? They can. Coming to your point, we spoke in 21, but I want to set a context, right? So the high of the Nifty just before COVID hit was 12,200.
Roughly, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Today, 4 years out, right? 4+ years now, because that was February, we are now already
Roughly.
in April, but roughly 4 years out, Nifty has not even doubled. We are not even 24, we are 22,700 or whatever. We are still not doubled. But if I tell you that Nifty profits, if you take the top 50 companies, and if I add up the net profits of the top 50 companies as of March 2020, it was about 3 lakh crores. Okay. I'm just rounding it off for simplicity. Yeah. And now the fourth quarter results are out, but we have the numbers for the first 9 months. मैं simply उसको annualize कर दूं up to March 24. It would be somewhere in the region of 7 to 8 lakh crores.
Wow.
Okay, so 3.
Just pure analyzing.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'm just guessing one quarter's numbers because first 9 months though is already in the bag, right? And usually in India, the fourth quarter is the best quarter.
Is the best quarter, correct,
right? तो अगर यदि मैं पहले 6 महीने का ही लेके उसको एनुअलाइज कर दूं या फर्स्ट 9 months लेके उसको डिवाइड बाय 3 into 4 कर दूं, whichever way, I'm saying the number will land somewhere in the region of 7.5 lakh crores.
More than double.
More than double.
Wow.
While your Nifty has not even doubled. Okay. But more interestingly, since people mentioned mid and small caps, if I take the same number for the top 500 companies, then the number was 3,60,000 crores. What it means is 3 lakh crore agar was for the top 50, means the next 450 companies, everything put together was only 60,000 crores. Right?
I didn't know that. Are you serious?
Yes.
Okay.
So lopsided was the numbers at that time in favor of the top larger companies. That number in March 2024, if I take all the 500 companies, that number again annualizing, doing the same math, we will land up at 13.5 to 14 lakh crores.
So that's a 10. Have I?
You have not missed it.
No,
okay.
The numbers aren't
60,000. So 3 going to 7 or 7.5.
Yeah.
But that 60,000, the next 450 companies, going from 60,000 crores to 7 lakh crores.
Oh, that's mind-boggling.
It's a 10x. Pardon my saying, but I find it extremely amusing when people rationalize by saying, okay, by what measure do you say that the markets are expensive? And the measure they use is that if you look at the average 10-year PE.
That's a favorite, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you compare today, then they will say Nifty is trading at a 12 or 15% premium to the last 10-year average. and the mid caps are trading at some 20% premium to last 10-year average. Okay. To me, this is like the सिक्का of Amitabh Bachchan in Sholay.
Okay.
कि heads दोनों साइड पे heads ही है. आपने पी तो बोल दिया. अब मैं इन सब महानुभावों को, strategist, and I'm shocked sometimes even very senior fund managers also fall into this trap.
Okay.
And say that Nifty is trading at a premium to its 10-year average. I say, please bring another side of the coin, earnings. If you look at earnings from 2010 to 2020, हमने तो 2020 के बाद
Correct.
की earnings की बात की.
Yeah.
If you take a decade before that, the average earnings growth in that 10-year period was 6%.
Wow, just 6%. Inflation or plus or whatever. Yeah.
No, our earnings didn't even keep pace with nominal GDP growth.
Oh yeah.
क्योंकि real GDP plus inflation होता है nominal GDP
Correct.
growth.
Yeah.
6% तो अपना real GDP growth था.
Yeah. You're right.
So people forget. So now if I ask them a question, my dear friend, if Nifty earnings have compounded at 25% in these 4 years versus 6% or 7% in the previous 10 years, isn't earnings at a premium to last 10 years?
Yeah.
Then can't markets trade at a premium to last 10 years?
Absolutely.
But nobody talks about. Next time somebody tells you this, please ask them a question. Yes, I agree. Nifty is trading at a premium to last 10 years. But please tell me what was the average earnings growth in the last 10 years. Nobody has a clue.
Yeah. No, I didn't know this myself. You're right.
Right? And therefore, I am not fearful as most people are. Having said that, as I said, that in markets you never know. Like, did we know COVID is going to happen? We did not.
Yeah.
Right? Did we know the Russia-Ukraine war is going to happen? We did not. So things can disrupt. Today, oil is already at 90. If oil goes to 110, will that disrupt? Yes, it will disrupt earnings for a while. And then the markets may correct or it may go sideways. But as things stand today, the reason that people give, I don't take that. So I continue to be very bullish, both on the economy and on the markets. And I also want to come here on the economy bit.
Please.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
Though generally speaking, we tend to equate economy with markets, but actually markets का correlation is more with earnings than the GDP growth. जैसे मैंने आपको बताया कि 2010 से 2020 अगर nominal GDP growth 12% हुआ, earnings तो सिर्फ 6% हुआ.
Correct.
और इस बार कोई जीडीपी 25% से कंपाउंड नहीं हुई है. इनफैक्ट उसमें तो बीच में 2 साल कोविड के हैं.
Yep.
तो वी हैव जस्ट क्रॉस द प्री कोविड जीडीपी हाई. सो दीज आर टू सेपरेट थिंग्स. बट हैविंग सेड दैट, I also want to bring this to the attention that for the last 2 consecutive quarters, okay, and see, GDP is a figure which is generally supposed to be very well researched.
Yeah.
There are so many economists who predict कि next quarter GDP क्या होगा, इस साल GDP क्या होगा. गवर्नमेंट का एक एस्टिमेट होता है, आरबीआई का एक एस्टिमेट होता है. अच्छा वो छोड़ो, ये तो आप बोलोगे ये तो गवर्नमेंट के कंट्रोल में है. वर्ल्ड बैंक अपना एस्टिमेट देता है. यू नो, there are global research agencies who also give their estimate. S&P अपना estimate देता है. The fact of the matter is, in the last 2 quarters, India's GDP has surprised our own estimates.
Correct.
And definitely everybody else who's tried to predict.
Yeah.
So if I use the stock market language, when a company surprises on earnings, right, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
People तो अपन ने न्यूज़पेपर में 1-2 दिन बोल दिया, you know, ठीक है, politicians will take credit for it, all good.
Whatever.
What I'm trying to say is that 2 quarters of back-to-back GDP surprise is telling you something. That we are underestimating the growth pickup in our economy.
Very interesting. I mean, the small and mid cap number just stares at you. And we've only seen caution out there. There have been people, senior people, who've commented on valuations of small and mid cap.
And I
talking
do
about-
another on the same point,
Yeah, yeah.
not belaboring it too much, but when the calendar year ends, all the channel guys call us, so-called us experts.
Yeah.
I hate being called one,
Still,
but
yeah.
कि क्या लगता है अभी 23 is over, what do you think of 24, what is the prognosis, right? And the same thing happened. Everybody took out calendar 23 returns, same thing. I think Nifty was up 21%.
It was, correct.
The mid cap index was up 45 and the small cap index was up 55 or something.
Whatever number, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I told my colleagues, and see, fortunately I've been in the markets from 91, so I have seen these cycles. And we started Alchemy in 2002. So I distinctly remember the bull market of 2003 to 2007 was a ferocious market.
Yeah, massive.
And people only bought into that bull run only by the end of 2006, 2007, right? There was a lot of skepticism because the previous 4 or 5 years was so painful after the tech bust. Now, if you look at it, it's very interesting that if I were to show you, so people have these three numbers for 2023, Nifty up this much, mid cap up, small
Correct.
cap up.
Small
right?
cap up, yeah.
If I show them the number of 2003 calendar,
Right.
it was up, up, up. Then if I tell them, okay, now predict what 2004 could be, most of them would have said, oh, it's huge double-digit numbers. Maybe it's a little lower.
Yeah.
Maybe it won't be that great. Okay, 2004 was equally strong.
Correct.
People said now 2 back-to-back years. 2005 was equally strong.
Yeah.
2006 was equally strong and 2007 was equally strong. You had 4 years of back-to-back massive double-digit gains in Nifty, mid-cap and small cap.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying because it happened, it should happen.
Correct.
But I'm also saying that ऐसा भी होता है.
Yeah.
So just because 1 year you saw strong returns
Right.
doesn't mean next year it has to be bad. Yeah, I mean, people generally don't want to be seen to be very brash in our industry. And I can understand that you have to, but it became almost fashionable to be cautious.
Okay. Let's move to the big event.
Yes.
We are here in April. I think in some time now, the elections will start and the results will be out on Tuesday, June the 4th. Now, I mean, I don't want to go into a discussion of politics and all, but
Yeah.
still, your view, because I think for a lot of people, this is going to be seen as a fairly large event, happens once in 5 years.
Yeah.
The last time this happened was in 2019. The markets were a very different animal at that point of time. You didn't
Yeah.
have SIP numbers of 19,000 crores per month happening then. You are having it now.
Yeah.
The Nifty wasn't where it was in, and now, what I'm trying to say is the stakes are higher.
Yes.
Okay. So, therefore, how are you approaching it? What are your thoughts?
A lot depends on what the general expectation is. And I think this time the general expectation is that obviously this government is going to come back.
Yep.
Now, this has got even more interesting this time because the Prime Minister of this country has gone on the floor of the House and, to again use the stock market language, given a forward guidance.
Oh, yeah. He's telling, yeah, you're right.
370 BJP, 400 NDA.
Yeah.
किसी Prime Minister ने
Yeah.
फ्लोर ऑफ द हाउस पे प्रिसाइज नंबर नहीं दिए.
Correct.
And knowing him, and it's quite a bold thing to do, but I'm sure they're very confident for them to give this number. Or conspiracy theorists may say that by giving these numbers you are already putting a big doubt into the opposition कि यार मतलब कोई स्कोप ही नहीं बचा हमारे लिए, right? But coming to markets, this is not about politics. Coming to markets, somewhere, because this number has been thrown, markets have a habit of discounting things, right? So pretty much it is expected that they will win with a big victory. But there is always that little uncertainty. You never know,
Correct.
right? And I, again, remember this very painfully because in 2009,
The circuit days, yeah.
the overwhelming thinking was कि कुछ खिचड़ी government आएगा, and those were just the aftermath of the global financial crisis, and people were fretting कि अगर ऐसा coalition type government आएगा, इनको कुछ समझ भी है कि नहीं इकोनॉमी की, मतलब ये क्या करेंगे ये लोग, जबकि पूरी दुनिया स्टिम्युलेट कर रही है इकोनॉमी को, गवर्नमेंट्स आर इंटरवीनिंग. Will we have a strong vision and leadership to do something about this?
Right.
The fact of the matter was that the Congress came and the market hit circuit 20%, right? So I would say that if something, and the probability is very, very low, but let's say they don't get a majority or something like that, right? Then you may see a very significant fall.
Yeah.
But the probability is very low.
Sure.
Having said that, my view is that, well, the market's already showing that it's at a new high going into elections.
Yes.
Right? So some of that will be discounted well in advance. But an event like that is an event, right? So number of seats. Plus, secondly, he is also the government has indicated, the Prime Minister himself has indicated that he's going to take very bold decisions.
He said it in black and white, actually.
He said it in black and white, right? Which means there will be a massive anticipation, even after they win, going into the budget. Ki kya kar lenge?
Oh, first 100 days or whatever that number
right?
is. Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is you can interpret it in your way, because if you are, I am a stock market guy, I will keep thinking from my point of view, kya reform kar denge? Kya bada ho jayega? Right? Very excited. Somebody else may think from his point of her point of view. So I think that there is going to be a reasonable amount of optimism, excitement going into up to the budget. And after that, all this kind of, the beans will be spilled, so to say.
Yeah.
And maybe after that, the market goes into some kind of a consolidation mode, because all the anticipation, all the good news, all the big announcements,
Positive triggers,
ho gaye honge,
everything is done.
right?
Yeah.
And then
Wait for
maybe
the next round. Yeah.
maybe you never know.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the time when the market really pauses,
Sure.
or corrects, or goes into a consolidation.
Sure. So last question, Hiren, SIP numbers, of course, like I was just saying, have held up really well.
Yes.
You have a fairly large PMS and AIF product.
Yes.
What's been the trends there, especially in these last 4 years? Like, ab ho gaya lockdown, usko 4 saal ho gaye.
Yeah.
Here we are right now. So any trends, any changes, any interesting things you've seen of the PMS and AIF desks?
So I think we see a steady inflow of money. Usually, when you have a very strong year, there is a tendency to book profits ahead of an event like this. Luckily, we haven't seen too much of it. At least I can speak for ourselves, right? And that's also because we are very painfully, जो मैं आपको अभी बता रहा हूँ, we have with a lot of data, etc. I do a monthly video for my investors. We've been consistently telling them that, look, don't get off the horse, right? And this is, again, we say out of experience that we really delivered fantastic return for our investors from 2002-03 to 2007-08 bull market, because we believed in that bull market. We never got off the horse, as I say.
Correct.
The horse may gallop,
Yeah.
and sometimes it may trot.
Yeah.
But don't get off the horse. And we've been communicating this to our investors, so at least they haven't gone ahead and said कि मुझे profit book करना है.
Sure.
So we are fully invested. We are fully committed to this bull market, and we've got steady flows.
Hiren, like we did in the first half about setting the context, let's set the context for sectors, themes, plays, etc., etc. Here we are in 2024. When you look at small and mid caps, we've already spoken about that in detail. Then there's stuff like PSUs and railways and all. Suddenly, out of nowhere, again, here you could say that the Prime Minister set some context on the floor of the House. He said certain things, market got excited. So when you look at these themes, and you'll remember from 20 years ago, every time PSU का theme आता था, it would be met with skepticism. ये
Yes.
ठीक है, ये
Yes.
1 साल का है, 6 महीने का है,
Right.
जिसको पैसा बनाने का है, बनाओ बॉस, इसमें तो कुछ ज़्यादा होने वाला है नहीं.
Right.
Okay, because PSU banks were the best example. Okay?
Yes.
PSU versus private used to be a trade where you could not go wrong for ages.
Yes.
And yet people who played that trade now are, So let's set the context here on these, pockets of sectors and themes that you found interesting. And then let's go into what you find interesting going forward. Let's start with, PSUs or railways or anything.
Yeah, I think more than just PSUs or railways. I mean, obviously PSU will be a large part of it. But, one other experience that I've had being in the markets for 30 odd years, and what we have observed is that every bull market has a new leadership, right? Very seldom do you see that the leaders of the previous bull market also lead in the next bull market. And what I mean by that is, again, because data is available only very recently, I mean, from 2003 onwards only, 2002-3 onwards. So that bull market, 2003 to 2007, was a very domestic, cyclical, capex kind of driven bull market. So sectors like capital goods, real estate, infrastructure, hotels, all your capital intensive domestic cyclicals, autos, auto ancillaries, PSUs did phenomenally well.
Okay.
And the banks and the consumer companies didn't do that great. Right? Even IT, because IT ka boom ho chuka tha 2000, and in the post aftermath, they were just languishing. So that was a roaring bull market. It was a debt fueled, capex driven global expansion, and these sectors did phenomenally well.
Sure.
Then came 2008, which interrupted this bull market. So there was a deep bear market. And then 2009, there was a recovery, and 10 onwards, the new cycle started. And that cycle, 2010 up to 2019, pre-COVID, that cycle, the leadership flipped.
Changed completely,
Right? You had the private banks, NBFCs, consumer franchises, your Asian Paints and Page and, Levers and Nestle's of the world, all of that did phenomenally well, right? IT services came back, and nobody cared about infrastructure, capital goods, autos, real estate to pura hi mar gaya, right? And a lot of companies even vanished. They were all, and some of them were the good and great, which were part of the Sensex at that time. JP, Reliance Communication, Suzlon became a penny stock, right? Which were all the darlings of the previous bull cycle. Most of them got decimated.
Correct.
And others just languished, doing nowhere. Your metals, right? And all these so-called high ROE, high cash flow, high quality did extremely well. And their P's, very good franchises like Lever, Nestle, which we used to never blink an eye because they would trade at 35, 40 times. By the time of the cycle ending in 2019-20, they were all at 50, 60, 70 times.
And taken for granted.
Right? Now comes the COVID bear market and the recovery. So, pehle to, I think, 2021 to people couldn't understand ki kya ho raha hai, because we've never seen an event like COVID, right?
Yes.
So some businesses like pharma did very well initially, and what happens is that when something has been doing well for a long time and then you have a sudden correction,
sharp one,
there is a reflexive action कि अरे ये तो बहुत अच्छी कंपनी है, ये तो अपने को बहुत अच्छे प्राइस में मिल रही है, because there is a deep correction, you go and buy that.
Correct.
Right? That's a reflexive action. But come 21, 22, suddenly while these stocks did bounce back because of the reflexive action, the leadership was somewhere else. Okay. And in 22, your PSU banks, Adani stocks, and lot of other so-called cyclical oriented sectors did phenomenally well.
Yeah.
And obviously the leaders were the PSU banks, right? And so I remember that was the year 22 calendar, right? And obviously 22 mein kya hua tha? The Russia-Ukraine war happened. So, you know, all quality stocks who usually use commodities as inputs, they got whacked because your commodity
prices
costs
went
went
up,
up,
yeah,
oil
yeah.
prices went up, supply chain costs went up, and there was a squeeze on the margin. So their profitability took a hit. And 22 was also the year when Fed started to raise rates aggressively.
Tightening
So
started,
all these
correct,
high
yeah.
PE stocks inadvertently had PE contraction because if interest rates are going up, then PEs have to fall.
Yeah.
So you had a double whammy in 22 in quality growth stocks. And I think everybody rationalized saying, yeah, but you know, we own quality stocks. All the quality stocks have not done well. We don't buy PSUs, we don't buy Adani, and that is why we underperform. And I am not saying I am holier
Yeah,
than
this
thou.
is just-
I was also in the same boat. Okay. But the wise men of the markets have also taught us that don't have a closed mind, right? The markets, the collective wisdom of the market is very, very powerful. And then we really started to think hard. And then we looked at the numbers, earnings numbers, stock price performance, sector performance, and we realized that no, we are missing something. And we said that, you know, we've forgotten our lesson of history that new bull market, new leadership.
Sure.
So it can't happen that, and then as you rightly said, everybody thought that PSU is like a 1-year trade, you know, this is all very cyclical, ye hoga, sustain hoga, nahi hoga, kisko pata, who knows, right? But the fact of the matter is that not only were they cheap, and that's a good, that's a good thing because the starting point is that if you are cheap at the starting point before something revives, it's all the more great.
Yeah.
But I think the way this government has cleaned up the PSUs, improved the governance standards, literally given them targets like private sector, and also delivered. And then all their policies, which were focused on Make in India, import substitution, right? China plus one, everything helped,
Sure.
right? So I think that we are back to the 2003 to 2007 bull market, the same sectors.
Yeah.
So if I now go back and look at my portfolios that I had built in 2002-3, so I had all these stocks like the capital goods companies, you know, ABB, Siemens, Indian hotels, every infrastructure company that you can think of, we made money. Larsen, all of that, right? They are all coming back.
Okay.
And the darlings of the previous bull market, your private banks, which everybody has been so eloquently rationalizing, has underperformed.
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, it's very interesting if you look at the 23-24 financial year, and you know NSE has a lot of now small sectors indices.
Yeah.
The top 5 performing indexes. First one is the NSE Reality Index. Real estate is the best performing index, followed by PSU banks. Then I think it's cap goods, infrastructure. None of the top 5-6 best performing sectors of 23-24 were all laggards of the previous bull market.
They were not.
They were not the leaders. They were all the laggards
Wow.
of the previous bull market.
So change, like you said, a
Right?
complete.
And when I looked at the bottom,
Huh.
FMCG, Nifty Finance, Nifty Private Banks,
Private banks, yeah.
they were actually the
Leaders of
the previous
yeah.
bull market. They are
Yeah.
the laggards of this bull market.
So 1 year of rotation has happened.
Actually, the birth of this happened in 2022 itself.
Sure.
It just became very apparent in 23 and early part of 24.
ठीक है.
And I believe, with all humility, that very few investors and professional investment managers have been able to catch this.
Yeah. It
Okay?
shows in the performance, yeah.
It shows in the performance, right? Because people are still rationalizing. People still have doubts. I think this will only accelerate post going into the election. And if what everybody expects is going to happen, then post elections. And obviously, the turning point came in August last year when the Prime Minister again on the in Lok Sabha said great things about the PSUs.
Yeah,
In
yeah,
fact, he
yeah,
mocked people who said that jo pehle, matlab, he also
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
articulated that people generally are very cynical about investing in PSUs, but he said, "Is bar it's going to be different,"
Different, yeah.
and that's what it has turned out to be.
So give me your laundry list. I mean, what are you looking forward to in the next year? Or just maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Let's not talk about just 1 year, but
So
your favorite-
I look, I think, I mean, we've been doing a lot of work internally. Our portfolios are also changing. As I said, we also, first 2 years, we were a little, skeptical. We were still figuring out COVID and revival from COVID and how businesses will cope with all of that. We didn't just catch to this trend. But I think we are very clear now that the leadership will continue to remain in these sectors, right?
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I think real estate has a long way to go. Capital goods, power, right? If our GDP is going to grow and everything is going to be electric, right? Then the intensity, the power intensity of our GDP growth is likely to grow. These are all sectors that people have long forgotten. So I think what is generally called as cyclicals, a lot of the sectors will come, even hotels.
Yep.
Everything
Yeah.
that was considered to be very capital intensive is all coming back.
Sure.
Because there was years of underinvestment in power, mining, hotels. I mean, it's crazy that hotel room rates did not keep pace with nominal inflation
Okay.
between post the global financial crisis, and obviously they took a massive hit during COVID. But in the post COVID recovery, अभी तो 1.5-2 साल हुआ है, अभी तो
Yeah,
पिक्चर बाकी
yeah,
है.
yeah.
So I think while people may feel very fearful because many of these stocks from the absolute lows, some of them have gone up 2x, 3x, 4x. But I wouldn't fall into this trap.
Sure.
I think we are in the early to early mid stages of this new cycle. There is a lot ahead of us.
Yeah. So if you just look at the composition of the Nifty, I get that the broad direction that you're giving makes a lot of sense. I mean, real estate, for example, I think for 10 years it went nowhere. I'm not even talking of like the largest players' profits. I haven't compared it peak to peak, but I'm sure you would
Yes.
have the numbers on that. Forget at a sector level, though, I don't think it's even close to what it used to be at 2008. So I get that, that sector itself shrunk completely.
Yes.
How would we talk about the big daddies here? The ones that are sitting with some 30-40% of total combined market cap of the Nifty. Basically your banks and IT and, NBFCs and stuff like that.
And therefore, I feel that this time, if the broader markets will outperform the Nifty in this cycle.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay. तो जैसे नए रेस का नया घोड़ा, new bull market has new leadership. While it is true of sectors, I also believe that it is true in terms of market caps. And see, what happens is that if you see, why does something get into the Nifty? Because it grows well consistently and the market cap keeps growing. So I'll give you an example. We invested in Bajaj Finance in 2010. The market cap was 1,500 crores. And it compounded at 40-45%
For the longest
for
time.
the longest
yeah,
time.
it just went on and on.
And then it finally entered the Nifty, I think, when the market cap was 2 lakh crores or
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that. Right? But the ride from 1,500 to 2 lakh crores, it was not in the Nifty.
Correct.
Right? Now, that's a good thing. It entered the Nifty. So, the point I'm trying to make is that today, some of these sectors, like real estate I don't think even has any representation in the Nifty.
Yeah.
Right?
Whereas I think at one point of time you had DLF was part of the Nifty.
So we did this exercise of sector-wise also how the weights were. So just to give you, at the beginning of the bull cycle in 2003, and I'll just talk about real estate. It's very instructive about other sectors. The weightage in the top 800 companies was zero in the market cap.
Okay.
Zero. There was almost
There
nothing.
was nothing. Yeah,
There was nothing.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
By the end of that cycle, 2008 peak of the market, the weight had gone up to 6.9% of the top 800 companies, full market cap, because of DLF, Unitech, all these, great companies, JP, VP, all of that, right? From a peak of 6.9%, by 2019, the weight went down to 0.6.
So almost 20 years back to what it used to be for something as basic as housing, which
Yes. Okay.
Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Or ab 0.6 ka,
Huh.
we were looking at the numbers just as of very recently. We have just gone back to 1.8. Now just imagine if India is going to be a 10 trillion economy, market cap is going to be 10 trillion, so much wealth has been created. Is cycle mein to it can definitely go above the previous peak of 6.8%.
With newer players also. There are some.
And now you have RERA ho gaya hai, you have all organized, the industry has consolidated, and you can see it.
And you can choose from whatever you want. You've got large, mid,
right
small,
from
everything.
DLF all the way down, right?
Very interesting.
So I think that we are going to see all these sectors, their market cap is so, their weight in the index is so small, and the weight of the previous leaders is so heavy that over a long period of time, they will slowly, their weight will reduce and their weight will go up.
Yeah, just math. Yeah, just math. Yeah. Okay, so I want to end this now with just your advice or a strategy. Says there's a listener or viewer out here looking at this and who's entering the market for the very first time. Maybe he's entered the workforce, his first salaries come in, SIP chalu karna hai, etc. I mean, you want to just talk to him about equities in India. Like, if you were to summarize this entire conversation so far, what would be your message to him?
I would tell him that we're going to have the best years of India over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And the best way to capitalize on that is to invest in equities. Because finally, what does equity represent? It represents entrepreneurship and the return that the entrepreneur gets by taking risk and building a business when there is an opportunity. And this is the only place where 100 rupee profit is discounted 20, 30, 40 times multiple milta hai uska.
Correct.
Right? So let's say if you are a sole proprietor or whatever, your earning doesn't get a discounting. But you can see कि इंडिया में हाउसिंग ग्रोथ होगा, इंडिया में गाड़ियाँ बिकेंगी, right? You need to be a partner with that business, and the only way to do it is that by investing.
Yeah. Right.
So I think the earlier you start, the better it is. Yeah. So compounding starts from the day you start investing, right? So don't get too perturbed about these events. Also, I would tell them, don't listen to experts like us on TV all the time,
Okay.
right? But be confident about the country. Be confident. Yes, no journey is one way. 2003 to 2007 या कोई भी bull market, उसमें 2 deep correction आए थे. There was one in 2004, there was one in 2006. I even tell people, forget everything. The most ghastly correction, which was 2008, when the index fell 55%.
Yeah,
The
that's
BSE
right.
500 was down 55%.
Yeah.
In 3 quarters, the market was back up.
That's all it took.
Less than a year,
Yeah.
which is for the purpose of income tax definition, long term is 1 year.
1 year, correct. Yeah.
Income tax definition is 1 year of long term,
Yeah.
right? So if you are a long, and everybody and anybody who is experienced in the equity markets will tell you that don't come to the markets for investing for 3 months, 6 months, long term, 3,
Absolutely,
5, 6,
absolutely.
10,
Yeah.
15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Don't get too overly perturbed. I think there are 2 risks. One risk is of not participating. The other is, I tell a lot of my investors that, look, your best insurance policy is the quality of the underlying companies that I've invested in, right? If the quality of the companies that you have invested in are good and reasonable, even if there is a crisis, the stock prices will come back eventually.
Yep.
If it happened in 2008, if it happened in COVID,
2020.
if it happened in 2004 when BJP lost very unexpectedly, like, was it the end of the world? No.
Yeah.
So I think invest regularly. You may do it through SIPs. If you are a little more evolved investor, I would say lump sum is even better than SIP.
Sure.
Or if you want to stagger it, but start.
Start.
Don't wait.
Get into the
कि
habit.
election के बाद मैं देखूंगा. Because every 3 months, 6 months, there is something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Essentially, we are in an uncertain world. There is no such thing as complete certainty.
Yeah.
और अगर complete certainty चाहिए तो उसका भाव देना पड़ेगा आपको, उसका
Correct.
premium देना पड़ेगा.
Yeah.
So I think for a first time investor, I would say we're going to have the best years,
Sure.
and please do invest if you want to take advantage of that.
Fantastic. What a positive note to end this episode on. Hiren, our last standard question, which we had asked you back then also, and that I asked to all my guests, is any book that you're reading or any content recommendation that you have for our listeners?
Yeah, so I mean, I read all kinds of stuff, but right now I'm reading a book on AI, and this is put together by a guy called John Brockman.
Okay.
He runs a site called edge.org.
Okay.
And they bring some of the finest brains and they ask one question every year, one big thing, and they get all these contributors to talk about it. So I'm reading that, but I'm also rereading a book of a gentleman who just passed away, Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow,
yeah.
right? And it kind of reminds me how, something like investing, which has to be a very well thought, rational decision, we tend to take at the seat of our pants, right?
Yeah.
Thinking very fast about things. So I'm rereading that, and I'm reading this book on AI.
That's a classic. You can't go wrong with it. And there's always new lessons to be learned from Mr. Kahneman's work.
I think so. Sometimes I feel that when we first read it, we just kind of absorb, but the context changes, then you reread, you find deeper meaning because you're also rich with experience of what you've seen in the markets or in life or whatever.
And you can connect the dots easier.
And you can connect the dots easily.
Yeah. So, folks, that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Hiren Ved, Director and CIO, Alchemy Capital Management. Hiren, thank you so much for dropping by in our studios and doing this for our listeners. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
IVM.